Hey guys, Arthur here with another Autodesk Maya tutorial. This is a lighting tutorial. We will cover how to light our scenes in Maya. This will cover very basic techniques and we will not be using Final Gather. That will be for another video. So yeah, this is my light setup. Again, we're not using Final Gather, so we have to fake our lights that bounce off the floor and our fills and other things that Final Gather would have done for us. So let's get to it. I'll delete my lights first. It would be nice if you went in and grouped your geo, like the skull and the ground is separate. So make sure that it's easier to select them when we do our light linking. So anyways, let's get started. We will start with our key light. So first off, let me delete these layers. Alright. So I like to work with the light preview on, like this. And in my shading, I use default material. This will bring everything back to their default Lamberts, just so we purely see the lights and how they react without any color, if you have textures or not. I only have simple Mia materials attached to these guys. See, simple Mias, and with all the reflectivity and glossiness turned down. So they're basically Lamberts, but since they're Mia materials, they gradate a bit better compared to Lamberts. So anyways, let's get to it. First off, let's make a volume light. So I'll go in and go create lights, volume light. If you did not watch my previous video, and if you're fairly new to lights and lighting in Maya, I suggest you go in and watch that vid. It's called Basic Guide to Lights. It's very useful for beginners, and I won't be re-explaining the different options here. Alright, so I have my volume light. Let's do a test render. Wait, let's turn on shadows. Now in dealing with shadows, I use ray trace, and I always start with a light radius of 10 with samples of 32. That has always worked for me. As for my render settings, I'm working in 640 by 480 without any passes. Features, let it load. Final Gather is off, ray tracing is on, everything else is default. And quality, I turned up my sampling to 1, but no, let's turn that to. But since we're only going to be previewing our stuff for now, we don't need much sampling. And yep, that's it, no indirect lighting. Alright, let's frame our stuff. I have a render cam set up here. This is our render cam and my perspective. Yep, I hid my cameras. Alright, so let's do a test render. Open this up and go to render, render my render cam. Now, things to look out for when you're doing key lights is to really get that initial light in, like this. So we have how much light do you want to hit, like how much of the model do you want to show with the key light. I put my key light quite behind it a bit, casting from here towards the model. And I like the gradation of volume lights, especially for obscure lighting, something like this. And we're going for something like this in the end. Oh, wait. There. We're going to be going for something like this. So basically our key light is doing its job. Okay, now let's add colors into our key light. Now the volume light is not very well portrayed in the light preview. So once we add in another light, it will just pile up and pile up. So I usually add these into layers just so I can toggle them on and off whenever I want to easily. So this will be our key. Alright, so let me change the colors. Let me minimize this render view. Alright, so for the colors, the great thing about the volume light is white to black. That's the default. So this is white and that is black. So we can add a color in the middle. We'll make this blue. We do not want to change. Now when you're adding a color, you don't want to add a color here and then drag it here. That will bring the brightness from here down here and it will change the effect of the light. Unless you wanted to do that. But for this case, I want to maintain the brightness and darkness of the light and add in my own colors. Again, you don't want to move that. Then I want to add a blue just before it becomes black. Yep. Let's see what that looks like. Let's render this out. This tutorial might get a bit render heavy, so bear with me guys. Oh dear, it's not rendering in the render cam. Oh it was. Darn. So usually when choosing colors, you want to choose a warm and a cold color. That will bring the temperature of the mood down, and you really get that. So there, we just added this color just before it goes into blackness. I wanted it to hit the model a bit more, so we delete this and let's just add it up here. And let's change the hue and delete this. Bring up a different blue here. Yeah, it should work quite well. Render this again. Alright, so now it's hitting the model a bit. Don't worry about this, we will brighten this area up soon enough. So yeah, basically the sphere is a bit too small, so let's scale this guy up a bit more. It will affect the scene a bit more. Now let us render this again. So this is really more of a trial and error thing. And it's rendering quite long because again I'm using huge geo, which I imported from ZBrush directly, which was a really bad idea. So yeah, won't make the same mistake on my next videos. Alright, now the noise that's going on here is just because of the samples. We can fix that now or we can fix that later depending on how fast you want to work. The samples is here. In the end, you might want to bring this up to 64 or 128. But for now, since we're just previewing stuff, we can leave that at 32. Alright, so we got our key laid out. Now let's do our fill before we get to the rims. So let's do a fill. Now when dealing with fill lights, I usually start out with create lights. I usually start out with the directional light just to block in that light. Later on, if I want gradation in there, I could change this into a spotlight. So basically what the key is, what you're looking for in a key is really to smoothen out that black ridge in between the light area and the dark area of your key. So what you're looking for in a fill is really just blending that between both. So there, I got quite good blend going on here. And you want this to be half your key. So our key is basically 1. We're dealing with 1. So I'll make my fill half. It really depends on what kind of scene you're working on, but for this type of scene I work with half, especially when I'm just starting out. Like if I'm just starting my scenes, I usually make my fill light half, and this will change later on. Aside from this, I also want to make this a cold color. Not too cold though. Not too green. Alright. Something like that. There. So the preview is actually working quite well with us today. Thank you, Maya. Alright, now I want this to cast shadows because it will look awkward without the shadows. So let me cast very thick shadows. No, not thick, very thin shadows. So if you pump up your light angle to a really high level, for example 50, and the shadows will just scatter. You won't see the shadows, but what we really want is we do not want our light to go through the geo. That's why we need to cast shadows. So wherever the light will not touch, it will not touch. Because if we do not turn on shadows, it will just go through the geo and hit everything. And we don't like that. It will become really flat and really weird. Right, then the shadow rays, you don't really have to pump up very high. You can just put that at 8. And you'll see a bit of noise, but when we do a production render, we will just fix that with the sampling. Alright, so let's give this another render. Okay, that is not a little bit of noise. Okay, that's a lot of noise. Now right off, I'll cancel this render. Our light is too strong. So let's bring that down to a 0.3. And another thing will be to change the samples to 32. And one last thing is, it is in the wrong angle because our light is coming from there, so we want it to be the opposite. Fill is basically the opposite of our key, so I want it to be going this direction. It's basically the light that's bouncing off the floor. Let me check my review again. Okay, it's working quite well. Yep, this should work better. Let's render this again. So what we're doing here is we're really just blocking out our lights and then looking for that comfort zone that we can really work with. Getting those base colors blocked out and really going in and fine-tuning everything after. So the things to look out for are these, like these black areas, especially on the floor. We need to brighten this area up using a different light. Also inside the eyes, some light might bounce inside, so we might end up adding a light inside, or we could just use another light from the outside. Right, so we have a nice key and fill. Now let's add rim lights. Now, if you watched my previous tutorial, I mentioned that I like using directional lights for my rims. So I'll create a directional light. Lights, directional light. Now let's just angle this out. Let me scale this up. Now again, directional lights don't really matter wherever you put them, so I usually throw these guys out just because they're rim lights. And then I position them in the area they're coming from. And let me do backlight. Rim light is technically backlight. So intensity I bring up to 4. And let me bring this up. Now the beauty of these lights, of these rim lights, are I don't really need to cast shadows because all I want from them are their effect on the edges. And I'll show you the difference between casting and non-casting rim lights. Because in this case, I need to cast shadows for these rims to work the way I want them to be working. Let me duplicate this because I want a bit in front. Now just angle these guys out the way you want them to be looking on our scene. Change the angle a bit higher and lower the angle a bit there. Okay, scene's getting heavier. Alright, so now what's the problem? The floor is too bright. Now in the render preview, we will not be able to preview this, but what we do is we take our rim lights, then we select the floor, the ground, then we go to our rendering tab, and then go to lighting, break light links. Now nothing happens in the preview, but in our render, what happens is these lights will ignore the floor. So now the floor will not be brightened up by these two lights, and only the geo will be affected. That will make a really nice fake rim light effect. So let's render that. Now technically this is wrong, but if you look at it visually, it's right. And as you can see, we get more of the form once we add in these rims. But now here's our problem. We're getting rim lights inside, and we don't want that. These rim lights should not be here, especially here in the teeth. I mean, light cannot go through the skull and hit this, no. So this will look visually wrong, including here in the eyes. Again, the noise and the crappy sampling is just due to my samples here in my render view, because I'm recording and I don't want this to lag up. Here, see? There's a light coming in to the eye. That is very weird. That's why we have to cast shadows. So if I select these lights and then I give them a ridiculous amount of shadows, just like this one. So give them like shadow casting of 50, 32. And the other one, again, 50, 32. Now if we render this out again, these lights in here will disappear. They will only leave that rim in the outside. We might want to increase the angling here. I want to get more rim here and here. So now as you can see, it's gone. The lights that were touching this area are gone. Come on. This block here. Here. The light on the teeth are gone. The light in the eye is gone. This is due to the angle, a backlight effect. but the light inside the eye is gone and the light on the teeth are gone. So that's what we want basically. Let me add a bit more rim here. To do that, we just need to change the angle, these guys. So let me increase the angling on top. So I'm adding here on top, and then if I increase the angle on the side, I'm adding more here. Let me do the same here. I want to add a bit more on top and a bit more on the side. Alright, let me render this out and we can proceed to the next light. Now the thing with breaking light links is we make one area of our scene brighter, the area that we did not break the light links with, and one part of the scene will look darker, the ones that have broken light links. Now as you can see with the rim lights here, our eyes assume that this is bright and this is dark. Now it will look fake for now until we fix the floor. We will do that with another light that will only hit the floor and make the floor a bit brighter with control, because if we use these rim lights, it will increase the floor's brightness drastically. So what we're doing is we're really just controlling the rims. I think that's too much rim on top. So it's really just a trial and error process. So now I know how much I need to decrease. The rim in front is quite good. So let me decrease the rim from on top. Okay, now let's proceed to our next light. Our next light will be for the floor, right? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a spotlight that will affect the area that we are focusing in. So if we had Final Gather on, it would take care of this for us, but since we want to make the floor brighter, we could use a spotlight and cast it here, or we could take our key and whatever is causing that, which is our key light, and go into our shadow color, and we could change this. Now this will look fake, and let's just see what happens. I think that was too much of an increase of color. Let's just bring that down here a bit. Okay, so let's go here. Now our floor is pitch black. We do not like that. Let's see what happens when we change the shadow color. It did increase the brightness of the floor a bit. Just a touch. I guess that works better than adding another light into the scene. Yeah. So now we're down to our last light. The light that will blend our fill and our key together. The light that will blend our key and fill. And hopefully brighten this area up and inside the eye. Alright, the floor is still a bit too dark. Let us increase the shadow color a bit more. Yeah, something like that. If it's too much, we can always lower it. Okay, the last one will be our one more directional light. Because again, we're just blocking out these colors, blocking out these lights. So I take this directional light, then I angle it towards the area. There you go. So now as you can see, it's really blending the two lights together, our fill and our key. Let's turn off the light preview and just angle this. There. So hopefully this will brighten up the bottom part of the mouth. And you might want to make this higher angle. Alright, that's what I want. Now let's bring this down to like 0.2. All we really need is just a blending factor between the two. 0.2, 0.5 I guess will work. Alright, we will not change the color yet because I want to see how it blends. And if we do change the color, there might be bias between our key color and our fill color. Usually you want the key and fill to be the ones making the color. Cancel that because it's not rendering from camera 1. There you go. Now this is rendering for characters and objects. This is not really rendering for interior. That's a whole different subject, a whole different way of doing lights. I will cover it again. I might cover it one of these days. I forgot to break the floor, so let me break the light links between the directional, our last directional, and the floor. And yep, let's go about rendering this again. Oh, and it's too bright. So yeah, many things you can pick up from just looking at the partial render. I guess 2 is still a bit too high, 1.5, 0.15. See if this works well. All we really need is just that blending factor. Remember that, guys. We're not looking for anything else that will increase the light value. Just really blend those two lights together. Now our fill is really brightening up, and there is this. It is looking weird. We did not cast shadows, did we? Guess that's why. See, this is why you should cast your shadows. If not, light will leak into areas you don't want it to leak into. Alright, so let me cast shadows for this one. Yep, we did not cast shadows. Now this I can put a 10 because the shadow will go that way, and I guess that's alright. No. Follow your gut feeling. Anyways, and for our fill, we need to make this a bit darker, a bit more solid of a blue because it's blending too much. So we need to add its strength. And this is too sky blue. I want to bring this up a bit. There you go. That kind of blue will do well. Let's try rendering this again. And there you have it, guys. I guess this is the basic setup of these lights. It needs to be darkened, I guess. No, there's light going through the teeth, so that makes sense. Yeah. Looking alright. Our fill is too bright. Everything else is alright. I want to add a bit more orange here. So with those final notes, just make my fill a bit darker. and add a bit more color to my key. And this looks terrible. Change that color in my key. Alright, then we can do a production render. Okay, so production quality render. Right, so these guys I will pump up to 64. Now you have to do this for all lights. They won't do it at the same time. So this is 64. That's why outliner comes in handy. I can easily select my key light, this volume light. Now that's why it's brightening up there. Let me bring this guy down. Alright. Now for, oh, I wanted one more blue light in there. There, that's good. Now for my fill, this is too strong. Let me bring you down a notch. Not too much of a notch. Just bring you down a bit. Alright. Oh yeah, samples. Samples on this guy increase to 64. And okay, those are my two rims. Now this one is working fine with 32. Now my key light, bring that to 64. And finally, for my render, bring my sampling to 2 and make my filter, no, let's leave it at box. If I change the filter, it will be very heavy. But if you guys are going to be rendering on your own, I would suggest Mitchell for stills and Gaussian for animation. Alright, and that's it, I guess. Double check everything before you do render, and we're good. Let's do a final render. This will take some time, guys. You could skip a bit. So as you can see, the aliasing problems are gone. The lights are blending quite well. The noise is gone because we increased the samples in all our lights. We're not using final gather. Now if I was not recording, this render would be pretty quick actually, since we did not use any indirect lighting. We're only using cheap lights. We didn't use any area lights. We didn't use any spotlights. And yeah, these are all basic shaders, nothing fancy, no textures yet. Imagine if these guys had textures. Yeah, that would make a lot of difference. So you'll know when the lighting is good, when the lighting alone looks really good without any textures on. And you'll know when the model really stands out with just getting those forms out. And you'll appreciate your work more. Yeah, you might want to make this area darker, but heck, that looks good. You might also want to go in and name these guys like Directional Rim 1 or Rim 1, Rim 2, Fill 1, Fill 2, Key Light. Naming is everything in this industry, I guess. So again, this tutorial is very basic. We do not cover any fog. We do not cover any final gather. We do not use any indirect lighting. No image-based lighting. It's all just Maya and its lights, and how to bring out a very good light setup for very basic scenes like this. Yeah, rendering, rendering. There you guys have it. Very, very basic light setup. That is looking quite good. I encourage you guys to go crazy. I mean, you could put a light inside here to fake that bouncing inside. Like, this area is too dark here in the back area of that jaw. You could even add a light inside here to fake the bouncing of light inside the eye. Yeah. By light I mean you could put a volume light inside, so you have very good control over that. Yeah, and that will make this even better. So yeah, that's it for now, guys. I hope this helps, and if you liked it, leave a comment. So hit like, subscribe maybe. I'll be making more of these, and tell me what you guys want to see next. Cheers!